Are you building a business, feeling the stress of all the pressures on you, and hungry to learn from other entrepreneurs? Then you're in the right place. You're listening to But First Principles, where we highlight the principles you need to win both at work and at life. Let's dive in. All right, so for this episode of But First Principles, I'm joined by Marshall Pastore of Finstrike, and I can't wait to hear more about that. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Colin. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, as you heard, I like to start with a couple like rapid fire questions. So, just real quick, some interesting things about you. So, to start it right off, pretty deep, jump in the deep end. If you had one piece of wisdom to share with entrepreneurs, what would be that wisdom?
Yeah, so my main thing is everything comes down to marketing, right? And I think it's extremely important for the owner of a small business to be heavily involved in the marketing, almost micromanage everything that's going out in the world about your product or about your service, to make sure that your messaging is going out as you want it. You don't want to just, hire an intern and set them loose on marketing while you just focus on operations. The marketing piece is key.
Interesting. Actually, I'm a little surprised that that's your piece of wisdom, knowing what I know about you. But I can't wait to, pull that, sort of unpack that more. Okay, so what would you say is your most controversial opinion about business?
That is a great question. So I would say that contrary to what a lot of voices out there say,
Mhm.
I don't think it's necessary to do a head first dive into entrepreneurship. I think that having a nice, 9 to 5 sort of supplementing your entrepreneurial drive and spirit is really great. It's great to have that steady income. And then, that way, that money that you're earning from your side ventures, you can reinvest straight back into those businesses. So that would, I would say, be very controversial compared to a lot of voices you hear out there that are saying, quit your job and go buy an apartment complex and you'll be fine. I kind of take a safer approach to it.
Got it. So you're not like the burn the boats, just jump in kind of guy. Like,
Exactly. Yep.
excellent. Okay. Again, these are all good things. Well, I hope we can unpack. So, um, what are you most excited to be able to talk about on this podcast?
Yeah, so you mentioned Finstrike at the top of the podcast. So, really my latest passion has been offering a very niche financial literacy program to teens and to their parents. So, I developed a 4-year curriculum that walks them through earning money, budgeting their money and protecting it, investing, so growing their net worth, and then also just building character, so helping them
Hmm.
kind of take ownership over their financial futures. You see a lot of complaining out there, especially on like TikTok and some of the newer social media platforms of, the older generations had it so easy, like, we can't get ahead financially. And that's
Like
just
drowning
not
in student debt kind of thing. Like,
exactly, yeah, and it's just not true. There are so many ways you can succeed as a young person today, and I want to make sure I instill that in as many teens as possible. So, really, it all started with, I found a few statistics, and 74% of teens lack confidence in their education and their financial education. 87% of teens say they learn more about money from social media than from school. That's a very concerning one. Only 27% of teens say they've been taught how to manage a bank account. So those three stats I found, and I decided, I want to create Finstrike to go out and to change that in as many lives as possible.
awesome. So this would be an opportunity to talk more about it.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Okay. Well, again, in the spirit of rapid fire questions, what's the most interesting thing about you?
That is a great question as well. So
I hope so.
yeah. You mind pausing it for a sec?
Yeah.
Sorry,
No.
I
Okay, so we've never done it before. Just took a quick little break just to discuss like what's appropriate here. So the that's great, and I appreciate it. So the question is, what is the most interesting thing about you? And I like feel free to share whatever you want. We just talked about something, but like what would you say, Marshall? Like in your own words.
Yeah, so I would say just most of what I talk about and discuss with with friends and connections is business, right? And I have so many entrepreneurial ventures out there, but I think the most interesting thing about me is I'm family first all the time, and so I'm very proud of the fact that I spend so much time with my family, so much time with
Mm.
my kids. And I always make sure to carve things, carve out time day to day to be able to do that.
And actually, and frankly, personally, like I love that because that is that's deep value for me. Um, and man, I could talk about this all day. So I'm just gonna restrain myself and just keep to like you mentioned statistics before, right? There's this really fascinating Harvard study that they've been doing since the 50s. So like the longest running longitudinal study of like what make they address a number of questions, but one of the main questions is what like measurably tracking these people. They started with, a cohort in college. Um, over the span since like 1950, so it's like 70 years running, right? Um, what what's what contributes to happiness most, right? And you know what? Marriage, family, and friendships, relationships, right? That's really like the folks who are happiest basically are like married, monogamously and have kids and have like a relatively small circle of friends, but have a circle of friends, right? Um, where it
Right.
can be a relatively small circle of friends, and those are the happiest people. Like on, least depression, least suicidal thoughts, most like report the most positive emotions, like relationships, right? So if you build this awesome business, but you've burned all your, relationships, like what was the point, right?
Right.
Um, so
Yeah,
anyway,
and
yeah. So
it sounds so cliche, but at the end of your life, when you're on your deathbed, what do you want to look back and know that you did right? And I try to think about that every day when I'm deciding, whether to keep working or to go downstairs with my family and my kids, when they get home from daycare. And that's been my guiding principle. And I know now in however many years that I will look back and be very happy.
that's awesome. Yeah, no. Yes, 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 yes. That's awesome. So, all right. What's your biggest accomplishment? What would you say so far in your life? What are you most proud of, like in terms of accomplishments?
Yeah, so with my businesses, I would say it's just the level of automation that I've
Hmm,
instilled in all of them. And
okay.
it's what's allowed me to, have so many businesses at once and maintain my 9 to 5 and, my time with my family. You know, it's being able to, um, you know, start a business from scratch, but think about the processes that you want to instill in that business to make it, virtually hands off.
Hmm,
And so one of my businesses, which was one of my first, it's called Spray RVA. It's a mobile detailing company.
okay.
It's local here in Richmond, Virginia. It's been doing really, really well, but I basically set the entire thing up so that it's running itself. I spend about 10 minutes a day on it. And we can absolutely get into a little more detail on that, but I've
Details on
done
detailing.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on the
detail
automations,
exactly.
right?
But
Yeah,
yeah, Finstrike is the same way.
yeah.
Since I started creating it, I've been building it so that it's completely automated.
Yeah.
And that helps me kind of be able to hone in on the work that I need to be doing on a day-to-day basis.
Another thing like I really really love, and again, I'm gonna have to restrain myself again because like the one of the biggest things the clients that I work with is exactly like setting up your business, not necessarily like automated because it depends on the industry a lot, like how really labor intensive it is, but at least really getting good at creating SOPs, delegating, creating a machine that runs, even though people are really the machine, but they're following SOPs, and hiring good people, so that you can step away. I mean, I think that's healthy for the business for so many reasons, and it's healthy for the business owner for so many reasons. So again, fantastic. So that said, that's something that's an accomplishment. At the end of your life, let's say actually 100 years from now with your kids, right? What do you want to be remembered for?
So I want to be remembered for empowering others to achieve financial independence too. I've
Nice.
spent thousands of hours listening to podcasts, read through hundreds of books, and I've
Yeah.
really made it my uh, kind of life goal to become financially independent. Not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone wants
Yeah.
to listen to thousands of hours of podcasts. It's not their, number one focus, but it can be done by anyone, right? With a certain level of focus. So I want to be a mentor for others, to help them, grow their net worth. And first and foremost, because the whole idea of Finstrike started with my kids. I
Mm.
started writing a book for them to be able to reference, down the road when it comes to financial independence.
That's
And then
good.
I realized, well, why can't I just syndicate this a bit and help others while my kids are 3 and 1 and don't necessarily want to talk to me about talk to
Yeah.
me about money quite yet. So
You
we'll
mean
get
you
there.
haven't gotten to macroeconomics with them yet? Come on.
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah, that's cool. So no, that's fantastic. Again, Finstrike makes perfect sense, given that desire. And actually, I don't usually ask this, but like I read sometimes. I mean, it depends. Like season, there's times and seasons, but I'll read 2 books a week. And I'm total like business book junkie. So what are like? Could you name like 2 or 3 off the top of your head that like really like everybody's got to read?
Yeah, of course. I will say that, and I'll talk a little bit more about this book. This is one that is a little more niche than the other, but I'll recommend two. So one, The One Thing by Gary
Yeah,
Keller and Jay Papasan.
yeah.
That's a good one, and that's really helped me kind of focus in, my day to day to make sure that I'm driving initiatives that are, I'm going to look back in 10 years and be extremely happy I worked on them. And then the other one is just the OG Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like that's how I
All
got
right.
into it in the first
Yeah.
place. And I know everyone hates hearing that answer because everyone says it, but
No,
it's
the
just,
classics are the classics, like for a
yeah,
reason. Yeah.
it's a classic. And I will say I read a lot of his follow-up books as well, and they're all great. And like Cash Flow Quadrant is great. So yeah, definitely recommend checking out Robert Kiyosaki's books if you are new to the world of business and financial independence. If you are not, I mean, if you're not new, you've probably already read them all. So
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of like when people ask me, like, what are my favorite books? Like, I'm saying, well, have you read Seven Habits of Highly Effective People? Because, like, honestly, that's just like so foundational.
that's a great
Like,
one.
it's
Yep.
classic. Like, there's a reason it's classic. I can't,
Yep.
can't deny it. So,
It's and
so
and it
also,
has a little bit of overlap with The One Thing. It's somewhat similar in that, just understanding the difference between an urgent task and an important task. That was one of the big takeaways that I had from the Seven Habits, but great book. And it's been a while since I read it, so I might need to
yeah.
brush up.
Well, and it is funny because you said the one thing, and I'm like, that's really interesting to me because when I read the one thing, I was working with church ministries, right?
Mhm.
And I literally had 21 different roles. So this thing, oh, like you got to focus on one thing. I'm like, bro, you're not living my life. So, but like at the same time, those principles are what allowed me to like basically run 21 different organizations at the
Yeah,
same time, right? What's really like um the kind of the concept is like focus on the projects that will solve a bunch of other problems with it. Stop just punching out the problems, right? Go further upstream and say, if I solve this problem or set this system up or like, do this, complete this, what will it like? What's the domino effect? And I think actually he uses that in the one thing. Like, what's the domino effect that will happen downstream that will cause me not to have to worry about other things, right?
right. Yeah, and as a real world example, creating that automation up front. So
Right.
say your website, like for the auto detailing business, right? Like I made it so it's completely bookable, payable, everything's done by the customer online. Automated emails go out reminding them of their visits, everything like that. So I'm not picking up a phone and trying to work with a schedule. The schedule is all built into the website. And that's just, again, what is the one thing, that piece of automation, and that has, prevented hundreds and hundreds of hours just in the last couple of years of me needing to service each customer over the phone. But customers like it more too in this day and age. They want that ability to just go
Autonomy.
and
Yeah,
not have to
sorry.
talk to
Yeah.
people.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. And actually, and I think that like I hope some of my audience and some of my clients hear this because like I do think you've got to really get that like in your heart and you get your head wrapped around that because for a lot of business owners like the kinds that I work with, right, they built a business off like blood, sweat, and tears, right, and a lot of hustle, a lot of hard work, and taking the time to write SOPs first of all feels boring and or like write SOPs or figure out processes or automate, delegate, like so, process systematize, automate, delegate, right? Those three kind of are a combination. Um, and taking time to do that, like it's very hard to make that time unless you really have gotten your head wrapped around the importance of how that will solve a bunch of other problems. It will free up other people, like, and actually custom, like, again, in this day and age, we're getting more and more custom of what, I'd say part of it's like autonomy. It's like, no, I want to be able to figure this out for myself. I don't want to have to like wait on the freaking line, like for a customer service agent or whatever, I just want to get it done, you know?
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, amen. Again. All right. Those are my somewhat rapid fire questions. Here's more of, yeah, I'd love to hear more of your story. So let's just start out. You said you're running a couple businesses. So let's first of all just get that clear. What are the businesses you're involved in? And can you give us like sort of in 10 words ish, like what each of them do?
Absolutely. Yep. So first, I need to start with my 9 to 5 because I
Okay.
will say, that does take a bulk of my time. But
Yeah.
I work in cybersecurity and I support federal government customers. And I've been doing that for about 6, 7 years now. But have been, supporting customers in the tech world for 10 years or so.
And what is
Um,
that like? What does that like support them for? Like doing what? Like to help them do?
so you're supporting their renewals year over year. So we'll typically manage like, they're paying around 500,000 to 2 million every year for the product, right? So they're very, very, it's a very white glove approach that you have to use. So I'm not a tech, a techie. I don't write code or anything like that. But I'm more like in the account management realm.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So that's first and foremost, and like I say, that takes a bulk of my time. But
9 to 5, that's a bulk.
yep.
Yeah.
But I'm also a real estate agent local here in Richmond, Virginia, and that's sort of how I got started doing things outside of my job. I think my wife got really tired of me trying to talk to her about houses, and I was basically just telling her about every house that came on the market in our neighborhood. And she got sort of tired of it and said, "Well, why don't you just go get your license and just help friends and family? It doesn't need to be a huge six-figure venture, but just help friends and family as things pop up." And my negotiation skills that I've gotten from the tech world have really helped carry over into that. So real estate agent. I started the mobile detailing company. I don't want to call it a practice business, but that was basically my intention from the beginning was to make it or to basically learn how to start a business from the ground up.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Wow, cool. Yeah.
absolute scratch from getting the LLC and getting
Right.
licensed and insured to creating the website. I built it from the ground up. All of the automations, the booking flows for customers, and then um, buying all the inventory and hiring the people. basically what I wanted to learn from the ground up. And my goal is to eventually go into more kind of home services businesses as well. But this was sort of my start. It ended up doing really well, and it's throwing off a good amount of profit every month. So I'm very happy with it, and we'll see where that one goes. And
So,
then,
question, can I ask you a
oh,
question?
go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Like, do you actually do any of the detailing, or are you just hiring
No,
contractors, or how's that?
no.
Yeah.
So, and that's the one I referenced earlier where, I
Yeah.
spend about 10 minutes a day on
That's
it.
awesome. Like literally, so it's like literally spend 10 minutes, not just sort of like, well, but then there's some days when I spend 6 hours or something like
I'm
that.
not exaggerating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
okay.
I will
Right.
say I spent so many hours at the
Yeah.
beginning, right?
Yeah, yeah, of
Setting up
course.
those
Exactly. Yeah.
automations. Yeah, putting together the marketing system, setting up the automations. It was a lot of work up front, but I'm to the point where I literally spend around 10 minutes a day, not just an exaggeration. And um, I do not do the details myself. I have a wonderful employee who takes the lead on that and then also manages part-timers with him. So
That's great. Yeah, that's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah. So that's been a great venture, and it made my sort of transition to Finstrike, which is more of my passion,
Yep. Yep.
a lot easier because I was able to build that, set it up, get it moving in 3 months, as opposed to Spray RVA, which took probably 6 to 8 months because I was flying blind.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because I had that experience under my belt, I was able to easily kind of roll out Finstrike. So I know that's
So
a lot, and
no,
it's a
no,
lot.
that's awesome. It's like and that's I love that. I love that you're doing that, and I want to get into more details of like how you do that a little bit. But I'm also like curiosity thing with the homes, like that can be a very time intensive thing as well. So like how many would you say you sell per year? I mean, if you feel comfortable sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, typically around 4 to 5. And like I
Okay.
say, it's friends, family, friends of friends, but not, I do have a social media platform where on Instagram and Facebook where I push out content, but I'm not aggressively, cold calling people
Yeah.
and trying to
Okay.
get business.
Or going to
I sort
networking
of
meetings or like what are some of the traditional sort of real estate things.
Exactly. I don't do any of the cold calling, so which is what takes up a bulk of your
Yeah. The
time if
marketing.
you're a full-time agent. So, you know, but the beauty of being an agent, and if anyone has a full-time job and they're looking for sort of a side hustle, is, it is a nights and weekends job. You're touring homes with potential buyers typically after 5.
After their work,
Or
yeah, exactly. Or
yeah,
like the family who owns the home, like after they get, whatever. Yeah.
right, yeah, or on Saturdays and Sundays, right? So it's a good amount of work, and it sort of comes in waves for me. So my wife knows I might be a little busy if I pick up a client, but then once they're sold, it kind of goes back to So again, it sort of comes in spurts on the real estate
Sure.
side, but
Sure.
I also use my license to buy my own rental properties, which has been really helpful. So, as I go out and buy properties, I actually receive the commission for each one instead of needing, or instead of having to go get an agent.
Pay an
Um,
agent. Yeah,
and
exactly. Right.
and
Yeah.
then, yeah, on the sell side, I don't need to pay a listing agent. I just need to pay the buyer's agent.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay. And I am fascinated by, because hypothetically, if you're doing your own work, which is sort of the traditional way of looking at it, as a real estate agent, as a, car detailing, all that could take hours a week, but instead it's spread out nicely.
Yeah, yeah. It's been very, very manageable, and I think a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy and that I have too much going on.
Yeah.
And again, I can't drive home that point about automation enough. But also, I do feel like I'm sort of I'm putting feelers out. I'm still in that stage of my life where I kind of want to see what sticks. And so, even though
Yeah.
someone might think I have, oh, squirrel syndrome, I know in the back of my head that this isn't forever. I'll be able to kind of get more granular and more honed in once I find, that true passion and that company that really starts to take off. But right
Yeah.
now, it's been great to have some different buckets going.
Yeah. So like, okay, so finally Finstrike, and that like it sounds like it's kind of in a phase where you're still figuring out the marketing, you're still like working on it. Um, and it's not just simply humming along, or would you say that it's kind of humming along and kind of like snowballing, growing on its own, or is it kind of just steady, or like how would you describe where it's at in
It's
its growth?
it's in
Yeah.
the beginning stages. So we actually
Yeah.
just launched the MVP like last month, so
Okay.
about
Yeah.
a
So
month
very new.
ago. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're still we're getting quite a lot of traffic, but not nearly as much as I'd like, and not as many actual purchases as I'd like. So it's in that stage where as an entrepreneur you start thinking, what am I doing? But you just keep going, and that's part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, like even I've been informally coaching, I like to say, since I was four, right? I've been like in sort of consulting and coaching positions for the last like really 20 years because I started like right out of high school. I, started doing some like leadership stuff, right? Um, and and I can say like starting a coaching company, right? Like bootstrapped, I, like, figuring out the marketing and getting it to really run. I mean, as much as I feel like I know about business, every business is unique and getting traction. I think that first stage really is like almost entirely finding traction with your marketing, right? Whatever
Exactly.
that looks like, right?
Mhm.
So I know even a couple of my clients, in fact, like find immediate traction because they have kind of a group of like a network of people who are interested in their work as like consultants or whatever, and they immediately get the ball rolling just with the warm network and word of mouth, right? But as you scale, as you grow, like that's not reliable enough. So in a certain sense, they kind of like those, the businesses, if they want to continue to grow and not just be kind of a small lifestyle company, if they want to grow, they kind of short-circuited a stage that's pretty hard, it's pretty tough, and they're gonna have to learn it eventually, right? Um, so for the rest of businesses, you kind of get that like you swallow those pills first, or eat that broccoli first, right? And then it grows from there.
Right, exactly. And especially in the software as a service world, with Finstrike, it's completely different too than Sprayer VA was with home services because I can't just go tell all my neighbors about it. I mean, I could, but I'm selling to the whole country, right? And so it's
Right.
it's sort of been a little intimidating, compared to having a small local business trying to grow something that's bigger and national. So, just learning every day.
Yeah. Well, and I know enough people in SaaS that like it's also highly competitive. That's why most software companies start with like major investments to like, basically just pump out marketing and figure out product market fit because it's so competitive.
Exactly. And that's not me. I'm bootstrapping it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't want to go find $20 million of funding to hire a bunch of developers. I wanted to just see, is there a market out here? And I'll absolutely continue to build it out, build out a team around me of developers and, create you know, like keep creating a better and better product. But for the MVP of it, I just wanted to sort of see if there's a good market out there. Just because it's a problem out in the world doesn't mean that there are customers out there who want to fix it, right? So we'll be watching that closely here over the next few months.
Yeah. So okay, let me now work backwards a little bit or go back a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about like your background, like because I do think you have an interesting combination of sort of drives and interests as as an individual, right? Your entrepreneurial spirit, you're not afraid to figure stuff out and to go try stuff that's sort of out of the box. That's very entrepreneurial, right? And yet, and we haven't really gotten into this, like, from our conversation before, like you also sort of like to play it safe and believe in like the compounding effect of money. And so like very small things add up, right? Which is not your typical like entrepreneur going like burn the boats, like, go all in, right? Um, and you have some like you have an interesting sort of combination of things in your background. So can you tell us a little bit about like even just like where you grew up and like where where you went to school, that kind of thing? How you think you
Yeah,
came?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
grew up here in Richmond, Virginia. I
Mhm.
ended up going to James Madison University out in Harrisonburg, Virginia,
Mhm.
kind of in the boonies of Virginia. And then I moved up with my wife, who was, born and raised, or not born, but raised up in Fairfax,
Okay.
Virginia. So up in like kind of the Northern Virginia area. Very
Right.
different than what I grew up with here in Richmond.
Yeah.
And so we lived in Falls Church City for about 3 years, and it took me about all of that time to convince her to move back to Richmond. But we had a vision in mind, when we
We said
decided.
we, so like as a couple, like you both really, yeah, or
Yeah,
both
yeah,
of you,
we
not
we
yeah,
both did. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
she's been sort of behind me this whole way,
That's awesome.
encouraging all the different ventures that we've gone about. But essentially, we decided for the home prices. We just saw Richmond starting to blow up with a lot of folks trickling down from the DC and Northern Virginia area. Richmond's starting to become sort of a suburb of DC. People can come down here and work remotely and then pop up on the train, a couple times a week to a DC office. So lots of money is coming down here. And we sort of got in, right around the beginning stages of that. And we did it by buying a duplex together down here in a historical district called the Fan of Richmond. And we lived in one of the units and rented out the others. You'll hear it called house hacking, but that's the way I really do recommend getting into real estate. If you want to get into like a level A neighborhood and
Mm.
you want to be able to afford it, it's tough to just buy a single family home and make that cash flow with rental.
Right.
But it is a lot easier to house hack, and so that's what we did. That's what sort of started our real estate ventures, and we've been
Mhm.
in Richmond ever since.
Nice. And what was your degree in college?
Business administration
Okay. All right.
with interestingly with a minor in human resources. So
That is,
uh,
I mean, especially if in automation guys, like enough of the human beings, I'm just going to use computers. Like,
exactly, yeah. So I
yeah.
worked for a staffing software company
Mhm.
during college. That was how I got into software as a service and working for
Ah,
companies like that. And it was sort of in the startup phase, and it was so much fun working for them. And so since it was staffing software, I was like, well, maybe I'll just get a human resources minor in case I choose to stay in this. But I didn't. Here I am in cybersecurity. So.
yeah. So interesting too, because I think there's always two sides of the coin, or like there's multiple perspectives on things, and I've heard both sides vehemently defended. I think Mark Cuban, like one time, was talking about like absolutely you need an MBA if you're going to be in business because it teaches you a vocabulary, it teaches you a way of thinking about things, thinking through things. And I've also trying to think of it like there's an author who has some great work out there, like personal MBA. I can't think of his name, but like forget getting an MBA because like you're not really going to learn anything except corporate life and the actual like you're going to do small business and start your own thing like it's like you don't even need any of that stuff, right? So like where would you land with like the MBA? How helpful has it been for you?
Strongly against Cuban on this one. And
Okay.
I know he'll probably text me after he sees this
Yeah, of
episode,
course,
but
yes. 100%.
no,
Like
I'm
he's
kidding. But
listening.
it's
Yeah.
it's I firmly don't believe that you need an MBA in today's climate, and
Right.
it is extremely expensive.
Right.
I recommend getting an internship as early as you can in college. Mine started with this startup freshman year of college, the summer after. And I was actually with that company for 9 years. I kept
Hmm.
interning with them basically for 9 years, even
Wow.
after I graduated college and got a full-time job. And so I was basically getting that crash course in the corporate world while being paid $20 an hour. You can't really beat that. Whereas an MBA, I mean, granted, some companies will pay for your MBA, and if that's the case, go do it. But I just think going into a ton of debt, for the payoff is not really necessary in this day and
Yeah.
age.
So okay, well, which I hope kind of leads naturally, debt and you mentioned Kawasaki and like um so what's your philosophy on money? Like what like you like um why bother with all this stuff and what are you trying to teach through Finstrike? I mean I know I'm kind of pulling a couple things together, but like I
Yeah, I know. I
think it fits
mean,
together. Yeah.
it's a good question. I mean, I kind of touched on this earlier with Finstrike, but there's really four pillars I'm trying to teach, and
Okay.
that's earning money, and that doesn't necessarily need to be through a traditional job. You can have things on the side. As long as you can solve a problem for someone else, you can make money. You just need to be creative, right? So teaching that, earning money, then protecting it. So having a budget and always spending less than what you're bringing in. Gosh, with these new buy now, pay later loans that
Yeah,
that
man.
are everywhere, charging crazy interest percentages, and kids don't know necessarily, especially if their parents aren't teaching them to be very, to have their guard up and with these types of things. So budgeting and just being careful with your spending and being very mindful. Out of college, I was saving 50% of my salary, and I was not making very much, but I was very intentional about how I was spending. I was living way beneath my means. Whereas a lot of my friends went and got, nice apartments because we weren't used to the salary, right? So just, the budgeting piece is important, and then growing it. I mean, that's where you get from, you can save all day, but if you're not growing
Yeah.
your uh your money and you're not having it go out and work for you, then you're actually going to end up poorer because inflation is crazy,
It
right?
actually
So
outpaces like so which is oh man, and that's a whole other, deep dive, but like actually owning assets, like the importance of
yes.
that. I mean, that's a big topic, right? But like yes, that can't be emphasized enough as far as I'm concerned. If you really do want to build wealth.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of arguments around this, but Kiyosaki says like your personal residence is not an investment. And whether you agree with that or not, and I have my hesitations because we've made a lot of money over the
Yeah,
years
with
through
real
personal
estate, right? Yeah.
residences,
Yeah.
right? But his sentiment behind that statement, right, is just that if it's not earning money month over month, then it's a liability. If a rental property is absolutely an asset, especially if it's cash flowing, right? Because, you're holding on to that asset, it's appreciating in value over the years. A car is not, right? A car is a liability. So just being able to delineate these things, and we have, all of this type of training in Finstrike, it's just so important. And it's especially important to learn young because if you can't manage $100 a month in income, you can't manage 5,000 a month. It has to start small and it has to start when you're young. So
You had four pillars:
that was
earning
three.
income, protecting, building wealth, and is that
Growing.
correct? Those are the
Yep.
three, and
And
then
then the fourth one is just owning your future, right? Like, actually taking ownership and not saying, "Oh, well, home prices are too high," and giving up. Or, uh the older generations had it so much easier than we did. Okay, in some instances, yes, but like let's all as a group get over it and like figure out how to move forward and build character and build a business and make it work. Because again, like this country is beautiful because you can start from nothing and build something, right? And not a lot of other countries have that, give you that ability. So yes, there are billionaires out there, right? There's quite a few of them. Like, do we hate them? like I don't even really think about them because all I'm trying to do is build, you know, build my family's future, build my future, and the beauty of it is you can start from zero and really build something.
I mean, and so that fourth pillar to me, like I kind of put that into the bucket of like mindset, right? And one of like the first principles of mindset is like to switch from being a victim to being an agent or a hero, depending on, where how far you want to take it, right? But when you have agency, you're going to, focus on the things you can control. I can't control the economy. I can't control billionaires. I can't control, I might have some like a little tiny slice of influence, the way that like I maybe get involved in politics or whatever. But what I can control is how well I master the game of money, and master the game of business, and take wise steps, like that will truly build wealth. And that's being an agent. Being a victim is, oh, it's too hard, somebody save me, right? So amen. Again,
Yeah.
like, that's really fundamental as a business owner as well. That's like you got to be responsible. In fact, the business owner is the shock absorber for all the unfair crap that happens in the business, in the business, in the marketplace, in the economy. Like you're the shock absorber, and you've got to like shelter your employees. And that's a mindset that enables you to do that and to be the agent, not the victim, not to fold under that weight. So,
Yep. Absolutely. And that's what I mean, Colin, I don't know if you're on TikTok, but maybe check it out just for a day just to see what's going on out there. But it is pure victimhood. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
granted,
yeah.
I'm sure there are other like rabbit holes you could go down, but 87% of teens, like I mentioned earlier, learn more from social media about money than from school.
Yeah.
That's very scary, and they're learning basically that they they don't have agency over their lives, and
Right.
that's one of the pillars because we're aiming to kind of quash that narrative.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And I think that's very worthy and noble goal, right? And share it with you. I mean, that's a huge part of what I do and what like sort of my original interests in coaching. So along those lines, actually, like getting towards the end here, and this is a fairly long episode, as it's turned out, not too surprising given all the different things you're doing. But the um, agency and being a shock absorber, like could you tell us a little story about what's something really difficult you've done that was like a moment when maybe you didn't think you're gonna like a business was gonna work out, or like something that was just really hard that you got through, and what helped get you through?
Yeah, so as with everything, it comes down to marketing, and it was spray RBA in the beginning stages, right? Um, I had an employee that I was, responsible for paying,
Hmm.
and no bookings, right?
Yeah.
And it took so long to get that traction, and he's been with me since the beginning. He's really stuck with me,
You
but
stayed through it. Yeah. Wow.
absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He's been with me for coming up on 3 years now.
Hmm.
And, I think part of that is just being a leader who can really drive home the vision of the company. Mobile detailing, it sounds boring, right? But like, what are we doing? I mean, you have so many people working from home. They want to leave their key in a front seat, go inside to their office and, bang out their workday, and then come out and see that someone spent 6 hours on their car and, see a beautiful car that looks like it was just driven off the sales lot. So I think, I really drove that home and drove, customer service and, going back out if there was even a minor complaint, going back out and fixing it uh, to my guy, and he loves it, and he's stuck with me through really rough patches. So figuring out the marketing engine is what took so long, specifically organic traction with it, um, and then kind of folding in paid advertising after you get that organic traction.
I mean, maybe I might even try to do this, like maybe have like kind of a master class with you, because I think you probably, everything you've said so far. you have a lot to teach about marketing, about setting up systems, about, like there's just some great lessons there. So it's very cool. And I know it was a very condensed sort of story, and we do need to wrap up. But yeah, I mean, also what I hear from every business owner, and just like, and this is my own experience as well, is like payroll is the most stressful thing in the world. You know, like that if you've never had heartburn or you never had, like a hard time sleeping before, payroll will do that for you.
Yeah,
You know, like,
exactly. I mean, and some like, my employee and I are very close, and so I know a lot about him, and I know he has bills to pay, and that makes it even harder sometimes. But um, you just have to kind of keep the faith and just grind it day in,
sometimes
day
you just,
out, until you get to a point where it's kind of more on an autopilot. Because you do get there, but you have to get through that hump. And you're not an entrepreneur until you've been through that hump. And you know it, Colin. It's
yeah.
it's it's rough. And again, you ask yourself every day, what am I doing? Like
Should I
what
start with
am I
submitting
doing?
resumes, or like, I guess,
Yeah,
like, right,
exactly,
yeah, right.
exactly. But it with the right with the right strategies and the right implementation, you can really get there. You can get past that hump, and you can find success. So yeah, I'm happy to rejoin up for a master class because I really feel like I didn't get into enough of the specifics with actually like day to day. How did I go through? Um,
Yeah, exactly. I think
go
you'd
through.
have a lot to share there, like
Yep.
sort of the, day-to-day operations, setting things up. Yeah, so obviously this is just off the cuff. So like we'll have to brainstorm that, see how that we work that in. Um, so very cool, Marshall. Last question, just be like, who do you want to connect with, and how do they connect with you?
Yeah. So again, one of my goals is to really help mentor people. So anyone who wants to get started with their own business, I'm happy to,
Very cool.
have a quick chat with you. Although I don't do it professionally like Colin, but I'm happy to just help with little things along the way. So feel free to reach out. But
Great.
really, my goal with Finstrike is to get it to the point where donations are, covering all student education. So I'm currently charging a small fee for it for students, but I do believe in financial literacy for all. So the goal is donations there. So really, I'm going to be spending a lot of time, doing a lot of education on our curriculum to potential donors. So if you're interested, like reach out to me about that. But otherwise, I'd really like to, help anyone who, wants to start their own business or
Hmm.
has any questions about mine.
Awesome. And what's the best way? Like, is it platform or email, or what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, let's do Instagram. And I'd say the main account that I have is at Pastore, PASTORE RVA. And that's my real estate agent Instagram. And I give a good amount of attention to it, but I heavily read the DMs on that. So I'm happy to talk to you through that platform.
Awesome. So DM you at Pastore RVA, or at Pastore RVA on Instagram.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Well, really enjoyed this conversation, and like then it's already over. Like I feel like we sort of scratched the surface. You've got a lot there, but fantastic. Thank you, Marshall.
Cool. Thanks, Colin.